Going live. I never know which one to believe, the Zoom alert that it's live or the web browser alert that says it's setting it up.
I think it's the
As soon as the like bar appears, the progress bar, you're live instantly.
Okay, cool. All right, well, we're live. Thank you everyone for joining, joining the call, joining the live stream, wherever the case may be. Thanks for participating. Thanks to NativeScript for coming by today too. Please feel at home and come by, often, early and often. Vote early and often. Before we get into agenda items, do we have announcements? I see things popping up in the doc there.
We do. It's been for a summer, quite a busy summer. One important thing to just note for today, after these messages, there will be a marketing committee meeting. So if you're interested in joining our marketing committee call that Rachel leads, that's at 3 Eastern. So stick around, and that's on our public calendar. We've also been looking at the programming committee. That's going to keep going for OpenJS World. We have some pretty exciting and ambitious things we want to do for 2022 because it's the first time we're going to get back together in person, hopefully. Fingers crossed, knocking on wood, saying all the prayers. So if you would like, this is a open invitation to any of our community members who want to help us populate that conference with great content, great keynote ideas, other programming. We'd love to have you weigh in to that. And so we're going to start by meeting bi-weekly. So the next meeting is, I think, next week on Thursdays at 11 Eastern. So that's those two things. We've got some exciting project news that will be coming out, and would love the CPC support highlighting that when those articles are ready. So be looking for those weekly emails from Rachel that help us kind of promote things that are coming out of our awesome projects like Node-RED and jQuery. All have cool stuff happening. Other projects news.
Maybe your book club looks like something's percolating in your
book club. Yeah, we're percolating on a new book club meeting. So this is not a frequent thing, but we're going to organize a book club call to discuss a couple of related books. How to Do Nothing. So that's a book that I think we can all get behind. And a book called Braiding Sweetgrass, and this is maybe it's like a more philosophical, I think, book club set of selections. So anyway, those are great. Check out that combo in book club if you're interested. So, and do nothing. Interested in doing nothing, go to the book club.
My favorite. I'm reminded too, because I think it was kind of mentioned there, but Node-RED has a version 2 release just went out, I think today. So that's cool. Should boost that. Find it on the Twitter. Cool. I still can't promote Rachel, but I'm sorry. Cool. So anything from the board?
This Friday, I think, is the board meeting. I don't think there's anything on the list unless I'm forgetting something that we should be bringing to the board. So if there is, remind me, but yep, the board meetings this week. People can follow the public session as per the calendar. So.
Great, thank you. Cool. So getting into the agenda, the first item here is something that I created a little bit ago. This is the chairperson election should be happening. What am I saying here? Yeah, I think my suggestion was that we would open up nominations today and have those nominations be open until the next official meeting, so 2 weeks, which would be July 20th to August 3rd, and then hold the election after that nomination period closes, and have that open for 2 weeks as well. That's essentially is a month. I think in the past we've only done 1 week, but you know, I don't know what people think. I think since we're on a 2-week schedule with the meetings, it seemed to make sense to have them open that long.
Sounded good to me.
Any other thoughts or anything on this?
Joe, do you want me to kind of run point on taking nominees and setting up the open vote in the case that we need a, because I mean, I don't know who's,
Assuming we get
yeah.
people who nominate. Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be great. That
Okay.
makes sense to me. I imagine we'll just use this issue for folks to, I mean, I guess we'll do private nominations first, and then we can do candidate statements in that issue once we open things up or what have you. I have a doc that I wrote last year, and I think it largely applies, except when I say weekly meetings, we've now actually moved to biweekly, but I think everything else is still fairly the same in terms of like commitments and expectations and things like that. I'm happy to talk with anyone if they're interested. I will run again, but I'm happy to help folks out, or even, you know, if somebody's like, well, I'd like to run next time or whatever, I'd mentor them through the year or whatever. Happy to help folks get involved. Cool. All right. Well, that's that. So yeah, I guess maybe we should put a note in there, a comment in there, Jory, that people can reach out to you.
Yep, I'll go at it now.
Excellent. Thank you. Sorry about all the noise here too. I'm at somewhere where I'm right on the main street, which is fun. Cool. Moving on. The next item is this kind of open issue we have here for reminders for long-term events. CPC chair election is one of them. It'd be great if we had something in place that would have created that issue for us, but hopefully soon. It's something that I want to work on is getting something like this put together, but just haven't had the time yet. But definitely, if anybody's interested, I mean, I think, you know, some sort of cron job GitHub action thing that we could configure for creating issues for certain things that we've dropped into this issue here, like the elections and whatnot, would be great.
Yeah, I think there's already an action which a couple of the working groups use to create their meetings. It's been a bit of a challenge just because it doesn't link to the calendar, and so if it gets out, there's an issue. But I think for this kind of thing, exactly that would be perfect, right? Because you just want to create something. You don't need an entry in the calendar necessarily.
Yeah,
so you might be able to grab some of that, grab that.
If you know what that is and where it is, if you can just drop a quick comment in there, I
don't really know what it is.
GS/meet.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Happy to help you with that, Joe.
Okay, cool.
Alternatively, I mean, we've got currently automation running that generates the recurring calendar. From the calendar, from what I understood, for the issues, for the agendas, for this and others. Couldn't we use that same automation?
That's what Michael is the one who runs that, and that automation is extremely old and something that we should probably try to avoid using more than we have to.
Yeah, we've been trying to move away from that. Just haven't fully gotten there yet.
Yeah, we could. The answer is yes, we could, but this is probably not a bad thing to use the actions with, and more people would be able to easily add stuff there. So, but if we don't make progress, maybe makes sense.
Yeah.
So would this also potentially be an improved tool for generating the issues for recurring meetings?
Yes. Yeah, that's what I think Michael and Tierney are saying, that there's something in place that's good enough to start using for this purpose. It's not fully fleshed out, I think, to really do the meeting issues yet, where we have, you know, the calendar and everything all put together. But in terms of just like creating an issue based on some sort of time frame, that is available to us already. And Tierney and I'll take a look at it.
Right.
Cool. Tierney, I was going to say, I sent Tierney, I think a long time ago.
Yep.
Tierney, you may remember this. These glitch apps that Ada Rose had made for the AR working group, and I wonder if maybe those are an interesting starting point too, that does something very similar.
I think we have a lot of options. Yeah.
Cool. Are you still streaming regularly, Tierney?
I think about it every week and then don't do it.
Okay. I'm kind of the same. All right, cool. Well, if you, I'd be happy to work on it with you either live or
Yeah.
not. We can do something next week maybe.
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool. Thanks, Tierney. Appreciate it. Rock and roll. Well, moving on. The next item is the community fund. Do we want to talk about this now, or do you want to save it for last? And since we don't have a long agenda, we could get people up to speed. I wasn't able to attend last week's meeting, and then we could use the remaining time to, talk more about it and such.
I would support saving that one for last, and that way we cover the other items in our agenda, and we can, yeah.
Great. Let's do it. I will look at this next issue, the DCO CLA issue, to see if there's any updates. I don't see anything. I know, this is on Brian's radar, and there's been conversations in the node space and stuff. So I presume that, it hasn't fallen off the radar, and that's.
It has not fallen off the radar. He's pinged the Probot maintainer. There is a kind of a cross-reference back on an issue where they're looking for folks to support on their end, to support us on that pull request. So, he was trying to connect with them this week.
Cool. Great. Thank you, Robin.
When you say there was support, like, is there something they're looking for people from our project to say, hey, yeah, we want that? Or is it just?
I need to review the
Okay.
code, yeah.
But that needs to be somebody from that project, I assume.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Cool. All right. Well, we will keep this on. Go ahead.
In addition to the actual execution of getting the DCO CLA stuff working, I think we do have a real issue here about the communication about it, where it's not really clear in places whether it is actually a requirement or not. And when you actually then look at what our current projects are doing, I think from what I could find, everyone that has some sort of CLA bot is using the JS Foundation CLA still.
They are, and we're trying to tackle how we are going to migrate those bot users to the LF supported Easy CLA tool. At this point, the JS Foundation's instance of the CLA Assistant tool is about 3 years out of date, and we looked at, like, okay, can we temporarily monkey patch it and make it work, but it's just too much work. So we'd rather switch everybody to Easy CLA. So we'd like for everyone using every project that chooses to use a CLA to use the Easy CLA tool. And for the DCOs, we have a handful of projects that are using that, and they're all using different things. And so the thought here with Probot DCO was, let's help the project sort of adopt the same DCO tooling. So whenever there's a support issue, there's only one thing that we have to, muck with. And so that's also kind of the background. I don't know if that's getting to your question, but hopefully it does.
My next question here is, are we actually tracking CLA or DCO usage and the status thereof across the projects? Because I'm not aware that we are.
I have it for the CLAs, but I don't have it for the DCOs. But that's mostly because of just data from old JS Foundation that I have. So that's something we could record somewhere as just generalized project information, if folks would be interested.
Feels like a markdown table in a file in
Yeah.
the CPC repo would suffice.
Yeah, I mean, it's just basic, unless, I mean, I don't think we've made that public because I didn't think anybody cared. But if that's something that we want to track, we can.
I think
There's no.
basically I'm saying that as a project maintainer, I have been harassed far too little about getting my act together and getting the CLA stuff updated. And I would like more harassment for me and others like me who have just, given that it works and it doesn't seem to be causing active issues, been stuck with JS Foundation CLA.
I like this action item: harass Emily more frequently.
Not just me, everyone.
Right.
Sorry.
No, I hear you. For what it's worth, we started a project board and Trello for our internal PM, and one of the top items is JSF CLA bot, migrate everyone to easy CLA. So this is one of those projects that is going to take some kind of longer term, more intensive effort, but and we're trying to knock some things off of our plate so that we can focus on it.
It does kind of relate to the question that 778, which Tierney put onto the thing, which basically is like, is it mandatory or not, right? And I guess if it's mandatory,
The answer is yes.
then there should be more follow-up, is kind of what Emily's saying, I think.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I mean, so it's obviously not mandatory. We don't mandate that projects use a CLA, and we don't mandate that projects use a DCO. They could choose neither. That's an option. We would like for them to use the same tooling because it does make supporting the projects much easier and faster. But I'm not sure if I think it may be a very strong encouragement that they use the same tool. They do have to use the same text of the CLA. If they're adopting the CLA, that text has to be the same. But if the function is through a different bot because they prefer a different bot, or they have, yeah.
I still think that's slightly different. Like the tooling is slightly different. The question is, like, if you have to choose one or the other, then it would make sense for us to have a table that says we know which one they've chosen and they've implemented it. And do we have, like the migration, is there something we need to do to help them implement it successfully, kind of thing?
And I think the more broadly, the specific question in that issue is this a requirement? Yes or no? And having one or the, it's not having a DCO or having a CLA, is having one of them a requirement? I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, I would agree. The answer is yes.
I also think it's documented somewhere. I think that is in our documentation. There's assertions in some PR in Node making which I think are incorrect, that got referred to there. That it's a requirement. There's assertions saying it's not a requirement, and it is.
And we had updated language as well, Michael, remember, on the board side, where you could use a CCLA or an ICLA or a DCO. So that portion of the language is probably where it's declared.
So it is required. We're saying one of the two is required.
We will pull the source.
And if it's not, it should be. I'll make that assertion. If it's not, we should have that as an assertion.
Yeah, I do remember, Robin. Yeah, we'd updated that so that we could use but I forget where that was.
I'll look for it after the call, unless you find it before.
Here, okay, so this is. Here, I'm just reading through this. I think this is likely it because it was referred to in the PR to update it. Right, yeah, it basically says each project must adopt either the DCO or a CLA. So it's pretty clear there. So should I paste that link into that issue?
I think that'd be great to have to point to the source of the policy.
Yeah.
And so then, just to clarify, that's the requirement, but the requirement to use tool A for your CLA implementation, we don't have. We just have a strong preference that the projects use Easy CLA, for example.
So if I understand correctly, too, just to make sure I do, it is a requirement to use either a CLA or a DCO, and there is a requirement on what the text says specifically, but the tooling, while we would encourage folks to use common tooling that the OpenJS Foundation recommends, that's not a requirement.
Yeah. And I think if you choose to have an exception, for example, AMP has an exception, that was a thoughtful decision, just because from a support perspective on a bigger project. So just keep the thing moving and doing is probably helpful.
And that,
I'm sorry, just the exception is
not using the Easy CLA or the Linux Foundation tooling.
Okay.
Just from a support perspective.
A tooling exception.
A tooling exception, correct, yeah.
Well, even in that section, it says like, hey, the board's pre-approved individual CLA or a corporate CLA. If you use those, there's no further review, but then it says, if you need to use a different CLA, you'll need to obtain an exemption from the board.
Yeah, so I think is that the CLA and not necessarily the tooling?
That's exactly. Tooling, it's silent on the tooling, but this is like, even if you want to, you can use something other than the pre-approved CLA text. You just then need an exemption from the board.
I think on tooling, and I don't know how much this really, I don't know how much, I think we're spending probably a disproportionate amount of time on tooling for how much it's going to be a problem.
Never.
Yeah, never. I think our recommendation should be Easy CLA, and we could support that. And if other projects want to do their own thing, that's cool. They can do that, and we're not going to they can't expect support from us if they're going to use something other than the foundation tool. I think that's a fine thing.
Yeah.
I expect if someone's hardlining on a tool, they'll be happy to support it for themselves.
Yeah. Okay. All right, that's helpful.
For those who have chosen different, we have had no issues. It's been just ducky fine. So
yeah,
cool. Cool. Right. Michael, do you want to respond on the issue? You want me to? What do you want to do?
Yeah, I've pasted. I basically commented saying there is a requirement, and here's the link to it where it's documented.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. It might be worth saying in here as well that if that's not clear, we should update the onboarding checklist, I suppose.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Do we have?
Go ahead.
Do we have documentation somewhere clarifying the corner cases of, for instance, if a CLA is approved but through one project and that CLA then currently it applies for the whole foundation, does that then mean that if a different project uses a different CLA tool, that those would get synced somehow? Or if another project uses a DCO approach, that this person, because they signed the CLA, doesn't need to follow the DCO flow? Or do they still need to do that? Or are we just presuming that these corner cases are going to solve themselves or are rare enough in practice that we don't worry about them?
I think we want to maybe, since those corner cases are corner cases, we will take those as they pop up, as opposed to at least this is my sense, as opposed to try and figure out what they are in advance and determine how to solve them at that time. I don't know what the corner cases would be at this moment.
Okay.
And I think Brian's so good at, I think, walking projects through the existing LF process that it's been generally pretty smooth sailing. So.
Great. Cool. Well, I'm glad that we worked through that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Moving on, if I may, the final issue is the community fund issue. I wasn't able to attend last week's meeting, so if anybody can give a summary, that'd be great.
Well, I can give you a summary because it wasn't about, we didn't discuss community fund.
Well, that's right. Was it just you and Michael? Was that what
No,
happened?
we discussed.
No, I wasn't there this time.
Okay.
I can recap where we are in community fund, and then Rory can talk about what we talked about on
Okay.
our last working session. And I'm losing track of who's who in our community fund. Michael, I believe you were in there. Sarah, I believe, was in the call. Just in summary, we the Linux Foundation has something called LIFT scholarships, and they have a really sort of great model for applications. And so we are recommending that we follow that process, and perhaps even the brand, because it has some already identity and brand within and among the open source communities. There's also a web developer LIFT scholarship, and some of those web developers may choose to take the Node.js certification. But we are recommending that we start with 20 scholarships, and we look at doing it either half yearly or quarterly, depending on how that first 20 goes. And from a criteria, we would love to make it needs-based on an honor system, with an eye toward underrepresented communities, including geographies. There's a couple of categories that the LF we thought were interesting that we thought we would sort of combine. One is on diverse communities, and then another one, it's a category called do-gooders, and how what you're working on or how these skills would help you do more things that benefit your community or society. So the next action item is for us to, one, I was going to draft some proposed language for an application. Two, I'm working with our training and certification team just to get the process in place for executing. And then the other piece I think that we all need to figure out on this call is how the CPC would have its review process. The LF found that just having 2 people on that initial cut was super helpful before it went to the broader team to do a review. And so we thought we would do something similar, have a small committee, perhaps 2 people on point to make recommendations. And then the final approval would be a CPC private vote.
Sounds good.
So.
Great. So we can talk about that. But I feel like, Jory, was there something that we were waiting for you to talk to?
No, I was just at the appropriate point, I can recap the working group session of last week. But obviously Robin has got all the updates from the community fund combos of the last couple of weeks. So we can stay on this topic for now, and just at the end, do a quick update on last week's working session.
And so I think what we had looked at how the CPC implements how they had implemented the travel fund. That was, I think, a little bit more public on the issues on who is applying and not. I think just on the sheer quantity that we may receive, and just maybe the confidential nature on why they're requesting it. We thought it would be more appropriate to be private. Okay. So yeah, and then we can see how that goes. And then we should have another working session as well, because this would just take a small little piece of the community fund. So obviously the community fund's much larger than that. So I would encourage this group to think of some other ways to spread the love from the community fund to folks.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good. I both those things that I think are kind of up for debate's not the right word, but discussion, I guess. Being private makes sense to me. I think 2 people on initial review makes sense to me too. So I'm thumbs up on both those.
we also wanted to, just as an FYI, there were a number of different things we were talking about using the community fund for, and the sponsorships/scholarships were one that we decided was worth diving into at first, because it has perhaps the greatest impact, and certainly helps with social issues that we care about more so than some others. So we thought that was maybe, start with what might be the most important, even if it's one of the more difficult to work through. So that was maybe one of the reasons why we're starting there first.
Emily had a question.
Oh,
too.
cool. What is it?
Chat.
Sorry, I lost my chat.
Yeah, in the chat I just asked, because I realized that I might end up wanting to file a request for the travel fund, and I thought I'd ask, are we open for business effectively on that front?
I think so. I mean, I think, until we get the documentation of like the community fund model working, we can safely continue to use the existing travel fund application process. So I think you're good, Emily.
Cool.
I was kind of under the assumption, but assumptions are never great.
There's a saying about assumptions.
That the travel fund would still exist. It would just be kind of a part of the community fund. It would just be a way.
That was my assumption too.
Yeah, it's part of the whole community fund kitty, and we're thinking about who says that? I don't know. Some people say that it's a kitty. Why is it a kitty? Why do people call that? I don't know. Anyway, sorry. It's it's part of that, but we're adding to the fund in a way. So.
Now I feel compelled to look up kitty in the sense of pot of money at stake in the game first appeared in the late 19th century. Interesting.
I'm actually much older than I look.
It doesn't really say why.
Huh.
One theory traces kitty to kid coat, an antiquated English term for a jail or jocular reference to a cage or shelter. Anyway, I was just curious.
Okay, thanks.
It's also used in poker.
Yeah. That's what that's. Yeah.
Learning a lot today.
Yeah. But it seems like when I'm reading, they don't really know why. Anyway, word stuff's fun. Oh, never mind, because their name just totally escaped me. Anyway.
But I think, Jory, you were talking about some of the other programs that were discussed in the last meeting.
So this was now, I think, more than a couple of working sessions ago, when we were sort of talking about the scope of the community fund and what would we kind of want to see those monies be used for. Obviously, travel for things like what Emily is suggesting was one, and scholarship or sponsorship of people to take a class or get the node certification, for example, was another. There was two other sort of paths that are suddenly totally blanking on me.
Well,
more
and I
specifically,
think that the core value is to help as many people as we can, as opposed to taking a chunk and doing a big project on it. That doesn't, that funds a thing instead of a person. I think we want to fund people.
I think it was, also looking for ways to utilize that money in a way that both impacted and benefited individuals, particularly those who may be underserved, and also benefited our projects. So, we were looking at things like a thank you type program. NativeScript wants to use a couple $100 to send, thank you t-shirts to their summer code interns or whatever. Cool. Great. That sounds awesome. There should be a path for that. I just made that up. That's a good idea, Nathan.
That's a good example, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Cool.
Thanks for that, Jory. My mic was muted.
You're welcome. So yeah, that's it.
Great. So do we want to, we still got 15 minutes.
So to wrap that up, I don't think there's any, so Robin's got the action on the language. We don't have another working session specifically for the community fund currently like on the books. So just as an FYI, our next working group meeting is next Tuesday, the 27th. And we're going to be talking about new collaboration spaces. So obviously we've got the package security vulnerability working group, which is a mouthful to say, and that's one that's kicked off. But we talked about having a brainstorm session around other potential areas for collaboration spaces. And so that's the topic of next week's, the week of August 10th is a working session with the package security vulnerability working group. And then after that, we don't. So I guess my follow-up question is, do we want to put a community fund specific working session on the books for in August?
Do we have one? I thought we had one for the technical strategy too. Somewhere.
Yeah, I was wondering about that as well.
That's what we had on our last.
That was our last one.
Oh, that was
Yeah.
the last one. Okay.
Yeah.
We
Which
just
I
had
will.
Robin, Jory, and Emily.
Yeah.
Productive group though.
Good.
Yeah. We figured it all out. So.
Okay. So, okay. I
Done and done.
okay. So I guess I thought, were you going to give us an update on what progress was made there, or we can go read the notes or something?
Go ahead, Joe.
I just want to ask really quickly before we get to that, 'cause I do want to hear, but I assume, Jory, you're updating that like meta issue doc with these things? Great.
I am. Yes.
Wait, so there's a list somewhere about which working session is on when?
Correct. It is issue number 739.
And it's pinned, right?
It's pinned.
Yep.
Cool.
Mhm. Although you had said there was a working session on the collab space for package. I don't know if that would work with the team based on our doodling. I think we're.
Well, so that one maybe then TBD, and I'll we'll confirm with Wes and
Darcy.
and all and see if that's so we could say that for now, and if not, the community fund.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're trying to get some earlier time zones for example, for Israel and other geos.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So Jory, you want to update us on that?
On tech strategy, yes, I do.
Great.
And I will do that while I also dig up the notes from that meeting really quick, which is in HackMD. Hello, self. Give me 2 shakes. Sorry. Will I sign in to my account? My memory's not what it used to be. I just have room for jingles now, apparently. Okay, yeah. So this was the 3rd meeting to talk about like a generalized tech strategy. If you may recall from our like our 2nd meeting, we came up with this great sort of rough schema of say solution domains and how each of our projects kind of fits within those components and domains. And then we started in discussion 3 to articulate like how we might like to use that information either for, helping to describe to the public. And so, if you'll recall, one of the reasons we have this is because Robin frequently gets questions from analysts and reporters about our projects, and they want to know sort of like what kind of projects can be found at the OpenJS Foundation and how do they all fit together. So we want to make some sort of version of this available so that can be useful for people to understand who we are and what we do. But we also don't want to dissuade potential projects from joining our squad because they see, oh, well, they've already got, project XYZ, and that fits the same solution that my project does, so they may not be interested in supporting us. That's obviously not the case either. So what Robin is going to do is draft she felt like she had enough, she's sitting right here, but I'm gonna tell you what she said, enough information to be able to have some kind of canned responses and share that with us for the analyst questions, like the press questions that she might get. And that solves one need for this discussion. And then for the others, we didn't quite, because like the landscape was another way of looking at this data too, but we felt that was not quite right. We don't really have a plan for how we could make this like a public display type at the moment. Other discussions though that we had were, and this was quite a fun conversation, understanding the types of projects that we have. So for example, the types of projects that fit within those components that are, supported by or brought forth by a larger company. So like Loopback was largely supported by IBM early on. It's now a big open source project, but like that kind of type, and also the type of what we called the Nebraskan, in honor of the ex-KCD comic about the sole maintainer in Nebraska supporting an important project, and what those projects needs and how we serve them are different. So kind of understanding the value exchange and what the benefits are and how we can best help those projects take advantage of the benefits. Yeah, so that kind of summarizes what was I think, largely wide-ranging discussion that was very interesting. We've, I think, got a lot of great intellectual material, but we don't yet have a clear understanding of the problem that needs to be solved with this information beyond getting Robin better talking points to answer those tough press questions, and then B, being able to communicate to our projects how they take advantage of services from the foundation and how they see the value of joining. Emily, what am I missing? Because you brought a lot to that conversation too.
The only thing I'm thinking of is indeed figuring out how much exactly we want to support said Nebraskans and what can we really offer them, and is it our place to offer them anything, which is, I think, a whole discussion that I think we ought to have in the CPC in some form about whether it makes sense to, because currently what we support really well are communities that together build projects, and either small communities or large communities. But then we have in the JavaScript ecosystem, we have a lot of projects that are really significant where there is really just a sole maintainer behind it. And for those, the sort of perceived, at least, cost of applying and joining the foundation probably by far outweighs the benefits for most. So whether it might make sense for us to have some sort of a lightweight membership for such individuals and, well, small projects effectively, to join and to be supported, and what it is that they would really actually get out of it.
I think one of the things you said too, which was very kind of no duh, Jory, but eye-opening for me, was just like the burden of managing an application process when the need for the maintainer is that sort of like insurance policy that if something happens to me, someone is going to make sure that my project and its users are okay. And so the lift of doing the whole OpenJS, application process is maybe more than such a maintainer would want to bring on, but at the same time, we can still help those people. So, how do we have a simpler program for that or not?
Yes.
You said that.
I mean, Emily, are you like, I think the way I could interpret that is there's more in it for the foundation than there is for the individual, or, the foundation is a proxy for the overall ecosystem. And so making it as easy as possible or low overhead or zero overhead makes sense.
Yeah, so basically for this question, I'm myself thinking of it as the maintainer of, for example, YAML, a decently widely used product library, but I'm the sole maintainer, and I'm doing it for fun and going through the whole application and writing a bunch of text and figuring things out again, even though I've kind of done all of that already once for message format, or at least got mostly grandfathered in. It just feels like, not gonna bother. But if there was a simple click-through thing saying I'm cool to be affiliated with these guys if they'd like me, and I'd be okay with these guys having a sort of backup admin access to my stuff in case something happens, for instance. So
right.
I don't know if, for example, the foundation would be a right sort of entity for that. And I don't know if we want to make it easy enough for more of that to potentially happen. But it is a conversation that I think might be beneficial for us to have in the CPC in some form.
Right, and it could be, it's not just, you don't do that for everybody, but you can, you say, these are the ones we see out there in the community that we think are important to the ecosystem. So let's see if the sole maintainers are interested.
Maybe something like that. I don't know what the criteria might be, whether it would be more push rather than pull in terms of these memberships or whatever we call them happening or progressing, but I don't know. It's kind of like, what do we really want to do here? Is this a scope of projects and individuals that we want to support? And if so, how can we support them and lower their cost of getting said support?
Yeah, I think that's the question. Are we proactive or reactive? And if we're proactive, then, why and what?
So big questions. I think to summarize probably what we're all thinking, do we want to support these projects? Absolutely. How do we perhaps signal that so that such a maintainer out there feels like we can and will, and that we think that they're important? And how do we also, as Emily put it, lower their burden to entry? I think is another great question. So maybe that in and of itself is worth carving out into a working session for ways that we can streamline process or create a faster track sort of, because I think at one point we're are we talking about a new membership or project level? Now that we've gotten rid of growth, we'll add the Nebraskan layer. So maybe we do a session of discussion on marketing and catering to that group. So just mostly so that they know that we are here for them.
Mhm.
I think it's like you mentioned, it might be a different type of membership. Oh, sorry, I have a call I have to go to.
Okay.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.
I think finishing what Michael was saying is a different type because, you know, one of our key benefits is marketing. So, and Rachel is just a part of a person, you know, just one person. So if we brought on 100, that were very critical, and we could protect them and their IP and their project and provide assurance and peace of mind. But we'd have to probably take a look at our marketing services and start creating some tiered sort of offerings. Right now, it's we feel like we can fully support everybody, pretty much. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Something to think about.
All right, we're 2 minutes over, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Point of order.
Point of order.
Cool. Well, yeah, we're over time, so I guess we'll call it a wrap, and we should talk more about this stuff. I even wonder if we should have like a working sessions label on issues, and then because
We should. The last 2, maybe even 3 working sessions didn't get an issue created because I was on vacation or just back from vacation, so I didn't make them manually. So I think we should. That does help raise the issue for people to remember to attend and stuff. They're also on the public calendar for those, but the calendar doesn't necessarily say what the meeting is going to be focused on. That's another thing I can do. I can update the title.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about too, like our agendas have been a little light lately for the CPC. So if we have a list of things that we can jump into once we get through the agenda, like we've been doing, that's helpful too.
Yep. Agreed.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks to Native Script for joining too.
Yeah.
Great to have you all.
Thank you so much, Joe, for going through that.
Sure. Cool. Without further ado, I will bid you adieu.
Good to see
Good
you
to
in the
see
marketing
everyone.
call. Anybody who wants to attend that. All right, bye.
Here.